I'm here today in front of the Roost, my backyard ADU, and when I built this 8 years ago, it was sort of an experiment on how far we could push the climate-friendly building for this area. Our goal was to make a structure that was energy efficient, comfortable, non-toxic, and a low carbon footprint. And when it came time to putting the siding on, my design partner at the time suggested that we go with cork. At the time, cork was just coming back on the scene within the building world. It had been used as insulation previously in the early 1900s, but widely is sort of unknown as a building product today. It's actually a really amazing product, and you can find plenty of videos online that talk about cork as an insulation, where it comes from, and how it's carbon negative, meaning that it stores more carbon than it takes to produce it and even transport it to your site. But today I'm going to do an honest review of the cork as a siding product and how it's held up over the last 8 years. You can buy cork in two different grades, an insulation grade and a facade grade. And what we used as siding is the facade grade, which is actually a little bit more rigid and can take the place of a rigid blue foam or green foam. Those foams tend to be pretty terrible for the environment in that they have a lot of high embodied carbon in their production. If you want more information on how cork compares to foam in terms of environmental impact, take a look at this chart from the Builders for Climate Action, and you can get a lot more information from their website. This is an insulation it adds an insulation value to the outside of your house, and it's pretty dense and rigid, but you can cut it pretty easily with any of your standard woodworking tools. It also comes with a shiplap pattern so that the pieces can overlap each other on the wall. What we didn't realize when we first bought the cork was that it's actually in metric sizing, so each panel is about 39 inches. We built the Roost as a sheathingless wall system, so it doesn't have any plywood on the outside. The studs are 2 foot on center. So when we got the panels and we realized that sometimes they wouldn't hit a stud, we had to come up with a clever way to figure out how to work with the edges or the seams of the panels. So we actually used a drill and drilled holes into the edges of each panel and then ran dowels through the holes, and that way it worked to sort of link the edges together and hold them together when they didn't line up on a stud. I wouldn't suggest anyone else doing it that way, but for us we just needed to problem solve at the moment, and that's the way we came up with. And for 8 years so far, this dowel method has seemed to work on these edges. They've held up pretty good. I have to say, after 8 years of being exposed to the elements, the weather has not really affected the siding at all, other than to change the shade of the color, which is expected. It's kind of shifted from a dark brown to this lighter cork color. Cork is naturally hydrophobic. It's a closed cell structure, and because of the resins and stuff that are in the cork, it just makes it sort of naturally water resistant. It seems to shed water just fine, even on the horizontal surfaces like around the windows where I had intended to put trim but haven't gotten to it. And the sun doesn't seem to have damaged it any at all. So from a weather perspective, cork gets a thumbs up for siding. Where I have actually seen the cork affected is by animals. Squirrels use it to climb up to the roof, and their claws scratch up the corners pretty well. If I had put the corner boards on like I had intended, then maybe this wouldn't be a problem. But I have still seen squirrels Spider-Man their way across a wall. It doesn't seem like there are problems with bugs with the siding. I haven't seen carpenter bees or anything else like that interested in the cork, but something gets in there, I guess, that piques the interest and curiosity of woodpeckers, because I have caught a couple of woodpeckers making holes in the siding. So something obviously is getting in there, and they have created some holes. So here's one of the holes in the cork siding that I'm actually going to try and repair. And I'm going to start by just cutting out some of this inside stuff so that I have a little bit more of a straight edge where I can try and wedge some new cork into. I'm just using a utility knife. So I've just opened this up a little bit and given a little bit of a straight edge, and that will give me something to adhere to with the glue. I did the same thing with the top, just creating a rectangle that I can cut a piece out now, and I can just fit it in here. And I'll try and see if I can create something that flanges out on the edges to sort of cover this damaged part too. Okay, I've shaped my piece pretty nicely to fit into the hole, and I actually did some work up on the hole too, just using the rasp right here to adjust the cork on both pieces so that they would fit nicely together. So this is how the piece will fit in the hole, and I'm just gonna use some Tight Bond 2 glue around the edges to place it in, and that should hold. So overall, I do really like the cork as a siding. It's easy to work with. I know that it's a natural material. All of the sawdust from working with it, when it goes onto the ground or blows away, it's just like mulch. It's easy to shape. It's easy to repair when there are holes, but it does require some extra planning because it's not your standard siding sizes, and you do have to worry about animals like birds. I hope you've enjoyed this review of Cork Siding, and I'd be curious to hear if you've used it for any of your projects.